Here we are, boys, the final season. Welcome to the spoiler talk for Ages of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7. The final mission, as the poster says. Man, am I excited about this, because I never finished this season. This is the only season that I, sadly enough, did leave unfinished, because of the fact that, well, I actually don't remember why. You know, this came out like about 5 years ago or something like that, I think, if I remember correctly. So, I don't remember why I left this behind, but I did. Maybe it was because of the continuity was getting a little bit wrongy, but yeah, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, we're going through time, baby. Yes, we are creating an alternate timeline in this season. That is the one, that's some people have called it online, the Chronicom timeline in that sense. Because, yes, we are altering history, sadly enough. Starting off, we are here in New York in 1931, as was discussed last season, and Daisy activates LMD Coulson, who is starting to have some issues with himself. Also, Chronicoms kill cops and take their faces because they need to blend in. But anyway, Coulson is having a meltdown because of the fact that this Coulson, the memories at least, came from Coulson Season 4, the framework. So everything after Coulson, I guess you could say, just left the framework, is a little bit unknown. So while the dude still remembers Ghost Rider, yeah, the whole time traveling stuff and also the fact of Sarge, that's not something that he remembers, really. So he has that basically 2 seasons instantly in his brain, and it kind of melts his brain. So Mac just turns him off. So let's get an explanation of where we actually are and how we got here. Well, apparently we took what is called a time stream, at least that's the way that I got it, to the past. We got a time stream, and also Daisy needs to get rid of the purple hair. Understandable. Personally, not a big fan of it either, but that is not really something that wouldn't be known as acceptable in 1931, and we have to blend in, boys. So Dick gets some money in order to go outside, in order to grab some clothing, in order to suit up, baby, because we're back in the past. So the reports comes in about the fact that bodies without faces have been discovered, and it's like, yeah, that does not alter the timeline in any sort of way, you know. But we go outside, we head over there, and then Deke kind of gives us the explanation of the multiverse theory in a way that is kind of the same as Avengers Endgame, which is basically like we are allowed to make small changes as long as they're known as ripples. Like we can throw in a stick in the river and it will eventually correct itself. No real problem. But we can't do something big, okay? We cannot do big stuff. We can only do small stuff. So ripples. Keep it at ripples. Small stuff. And also the fact that Daisy and Mac are gonna have a hard time because where's your husband, woman? And also, what is a black guy doing here? You know, it's the past, you know? That was the past, 1931. By the way, this was before World War II. Apparently, this was actually during the Great Depression, which Coulson says. Because Deke is like, this is awesome. I got all this stuff for like 13 bucks. And Coulson's like, shut it. It's the Great Depression. Which, who knows? America might be facing one of those again. Who's to say? And I also like the fact that Daisy was like, oh, so everything isn't in black and white. Which is just like, you thought 1931 was in black and white. They didn't have color yet. So, this was also before Superman was invented. Superman didn't even exist because I think he came out in 1938, if I remember correctly. Batman was 1939. So, yeah, this is before, like, the superhero phenomena took the comic book by storm, or created the comic book industry. I don't know. Did comic books exist before the superheroes? I have no idea about that knowledge. Anyway, the squad heads over in order to figure out what happened. The squad goes inside. They see the bodies without faces, and Dick and Daisy have to stay here because of the fact that on one of the bottles of alcohol, which is illegal, there's a swordfish, and apparently there's a S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ or an SSR HQ close by that use the code word swordfish. So Mac and Coulson go to check that bad boy out. Also, Yo-Yo gets a set of new arms, which is very nice. She finally can start to feel, even though she tried to act tough earlier. Don't, okay? Because she's like, look, I am not ashamed of the fact that I lost my arms. Like, I don't care, okay? You can finally have the sensation of failing again, okay? You can touch and feel what it actually feels like. No matter how tough you think you are without your arms, that is still a sensation that you want back. And when she feels her face, she just starts to cry. So it's like, yeah, of course. But anyway, Coulson and Mac arrive. They use the password. They get in and they are searching for someone named Gemini. And that is not a good word because apparently that causes everyone to raise their guns. So now we have a little bit of a fight. Mac takes out 3 guys. LMD Coulson just does not care at all because he is an LMD. But eventually, Gemini comes out and it turns out it is another one of those damn Koenigs. However, this might be the original one. Big Daddy Koenig. Well, not big, but Daddy Koenig nonetheless. Meanwhile, back at the cop station, Deke needs a little bit more time, so Daisy goes outside in case, you know, there's anyone who wants to come inside. However, when she goes outside, the Chronicoms have arrived. So, they see Daisy and it's like, quick! And I love how they've they've just adapted that name. It's just like, yeah, it's Quake. But like, oh no, they're here. S.H.I.E.L.D. is here. So 2 cops get out and they're like, madam, could you please help us in the back with a truck? And it's actually convenient that there's actually a truck there. However, obviously they want to shoot her. Meanwhile, the other one goes inside and Deke gets a recognizable face and is like, oh hey, you're supposed to, you stole the face. So Deke goes outside. Daisy Quakes one of the guys, and then they hotwire the truck in order to get back to the base with one of the guys in order to be able to interrogate him for information. Meanwhile, Coulson and Mac learn potentially what the real target is, and that is apparently FDR. Yes, indeed, because apparently he is a big figure in S.H.I.E.L.D. or SSR. I don't know which one, but anyway, he's going to become a big figure to be a part of that, so he is probably the target. So now we are at this party in order to stop FDR from being killed, and Mac just hates the fact that everyone's racist, but it's like, dude, it's the times, just shut it and accept it, okay? Because if you make a big deal out of it, you're not dealing with ripples, okay? You cannot change the course of time that much. Meanwhile, Simmons, Yo-Yo, and Enoch are trying to interrogate the hunter, and Simmons has an idea and plugs in and just basically crashes his system in order to get him to talk, and he doesn't want to talk. However, eventually they remove it, and it turns out that the target is actually not FDR. It's actually just a guy named Freddy, baby. So now we have to head over and save Freddy. Also, a woman arrives at Freddy, and it's like, hey, I am your contact. Come with me. I got some stuff for you that needs to be delivered. And with the timeline that we're in, I'm just gonna say that's probably Super Soldier Serum, because that was all the rage back in the day. Maybe a prototype for the Super Soldier Serum, who's to say. So the squad save Freddy. Mac and Deke get Freddy out of there, while Coulson and Daisy fight the Chronicoms, which is still a difficult word for me to say. I also liked how earlier, by the way, when they got to the cop place, it's like, hey, where's your husband? I thought that one was funny too. But anyway, they beat the Chronicoms, and then they are able to escape. However, they go back to the bar of SSR. However, the problem is that Mac and Deke are not there yet, and Mac and Deke are in the truck in order to make the delivery, because that is what is supposed to happen according to the timeline. So they go and make the delivery. However, back at the bar, we get the truth about Freddy, because Coulson is like, why is Freddy the target? He's just a Malik. It's like, Freddy Malik? Oh no. The big daddy of Hydra, and we get the truth revealed. In order to save S.H.I.E.L.D., we have to save Hydra. So that is how you end the first episode. Very excited about that one. And in the post-credit scene, May has woken up and she's like Spider-Man on the ceiling for some reason. But yeah, how did she get up there? Nobody knows. But May has mysterious ways of working. Anyway, yeah, please don't attack Enoch. He is a friendly. So it seems like the gang with Malik cannot make contact, and apparently it wasn't supposed to be revealed until later in this. I actually don't know. Did I say about the first episode that dude was Malik? Because I don't know if I said that. I don't actually think I did. My mind is a bit jumbled because I had to record that first episode a bit earlier in the day because I had an appointment. So I don't know what I referenced there, but anyway, Malik. The dude's Malik. Yep, Granddaddy or Daddy Malik. One of the two. I think it's actually Daddy Malik himself. So we have to protect him. He works for Hydra, and yes, it is indeed Super Soldier Serum. However, we can't make contact with the rest of the squad because of the fact that we are using walkie-talkies and we're out of range. Meanwhile, the rest of the squad have taken that woman to the bar, and Simmons is now here in order to help operate. She takes the bullet out, puts it in a drink, which I found a bit weird that she put it in a drink, but whatever, you know what? Later on, that's the funny that happens. But we need to get some information potentially out of her. And also, we fill in, obviously, Yo-Yo and Simmons about the fact that, yo, the one we're trying to save is Daddy Malik himself. Meanwhile, it seems like May has kind of calmed down a little bit, and Enoch gives her all the information that she's missed since we you know, time traveled. So he's like, yeah, we're in 1931, and also I don't know why he says 1931. It's like, you can't just say 1931. Come on, dude. But she obviously wants to get into the field, but that's not going to happen. So eventually, Mac, Deke, and Malik make it to the train rails, and apparently now this is the time when we split ways, but they're like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. We're not gonna leave, okay? We're gonna go with you. And when Malik later on is asleep, they search the stuff in order to get some information. However, sadly enough, now the walkie starts talking, and Enoch kind of gets through, but not really. That causes Malik to wake up, and then we have a little bit of a who are you people kind of situation. Meanwhile, the cops arrive at the bar, so now the gang needs to hide. So they hide in a secret special room with the girl, which that is technically a little bit of a problem, and the coppers come in, but they're the Chronicoms. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they be? And instantly Koenig sees, by the way, it's not Daddy Koenig, it's Grand granddaddy Koenig, apparently. But anyway, he sees the fact that there's a bullet in the drink, so he then takes a bullet for the team, in a sense. He drinks the whole thing. However, the hunters don't really find anything, so when they're about to leave, the girl wakes up. She wants to scream, but can't really because hand over mouth. And then she kicks something and a bottle drops. However, Yo-Yo doesn't grab it because I don't know why she doesn't, but she doesn't grab it and it makes a lot of noise. However, then outside, someone is like, found the vehicle. So it's like, okay, we gotta leave that way. So we were barely able to make it out of there without being caught because we were so close to being caught. And then Simmons finds a little bit of the serum on the girl's foot, and then she concoctions it and is like, yep, super soldier serum. And then we basically spill everything to Koenig for some reason because we're like, okay, so you mean the stuff that Red Skull uses during World War II and Hydra? And it's like, dude, why are you saying this when he's here? They're talking openly about World War II. I feel like that's a big ripple because they're not supposed to know that World War II is about to happen. However, when May learns that Mac and Deke are out of contact, she wants to go in order to help them. And then we have a little bit of a fight between May and Enoch. And Enoch is actually pretty funny during the fight because he just tries to calm her down with the way that he fights. He's like, I'll punch you, but like he doesn't react to the punches really. He does react kind of, but more like, oh no, I got hit in the head, but outside of that, I do not feel any pain, so I can't really react the way that I have to. So that's pretty funny. However, she gets stopped because of the fact that the gang eventually make it back to the ship. Koenig is here as well, but he's blindfolded, and Coulson is like, stop! And then May sees LMD Coulson and is like, oh no. However, she doesn't necessarily have a reaction, so there might be something off with May after they, you know, revived her, brought her back from the dead and all that stuff. So Coulson unmasks Koenig on the Zephyr, and he's like, really? You really think that I'm gonna be impressed with what you got? We're on a spaceship. We're on a spaceship. You people are Martians. What is this? He's a robot. Chronicom, actually. Robot. I love the reaction that he has to all our stuff. However, then a timer starts popping up, and apparently we have to leave in 17 minutes because of course we do. Why wouldn't we just have an artificial timer? Because oh god, now we have to stress ourselves about this mission. So then Daisy's finally able to make contact with Deke, and she's like, kill Malik. And I'm like, of course you had to be one of those, huh? To be honest, I kind of would have liked to see what would have happened and her reaction to it, where it's like they kill Malik, go back, and it's like, the future is ruined now. By the way, if you watch Endgame, you may know that anything that we change here will be changed in the future as well, but an alternate timeline, not in the main timeline. Because right now, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has officially left our main sacred timeline. They are in an alternate timeline. Any change that they make at least will turn into an alternate timeline. However, Max stops the order to kill Malik because of the fact that that's not why we're here, okay? And I feel like Mac and Daisy are gonna have a big talk about that whole thing because really, Mac, you can't let this slide. Someone just disobeyed your direct order and also the direct mission and put the future in jeopardy. So then the Chronicoms arrive, well, the hunters anyway, and they start shooting. S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives, and we have a bit of a fight. Meanwhile, Malik runs off with one of the serums, and right before he's about to make the delivery, Koenig tries to stop him from making that delivery and turning into a bad guy, and then he shoots Koenig in the shoulder but hits nothing special, at least that's what Koenig says, and he still makes the delivery. So technically mission accomplished. Billions will die, well, thousands maybe, I don't know how many people died according to Hydra, but let's say thousands will die, hundreds of thousands will die. But now we have to get back to the Zephyr. So the gang gets back to the Zephyr. Also tell Enoch to get back to the Zephyr, and Enoch runs and he runs and he's too late. Dang it, we teleport away the moment that the ramp closes up. So where are we gonna go now is entirely unknown, but let's hope we're not going back into the past anymore. Let's hope that from this point onwards we're kind of gonna be like Assassin's Creed in the earlier days anyway, because before we had like Black Flag, the Assassin's Creed games all slowly got closer to modern day. That Black Flag came out and it was like a prequel to Assassin's Creed 3, so that kind of ruined everything, but we were getting closer to modern day. So hopefully we are gonna go forward in time, even if it's just 5 years. Let's hope maybe a little bit more than that, just a lot more than that, maybe a 10 or something like that, or maybe 12, because the fact that I don't really know how it's gonna go with them being dap smack in the middle of World War II, so maybe we can get past World War II. Anyway, and then in the post-credit scene, we have Enoch, who becomes a bartender, and Koenig wants to know everything about S.H.I.E.L.D. and about robots, or Chronicoms, what he calls them, you know, just anything that he can know. So welcome to the 1955, boys, and also Area 51, which apparently was a S.H.I.E.L.D. base, because of course it is. I don't know if so far in the MCU we've known about that, but this in a way is the first time for me, to be honest. I don't remember any of the other projects that I've reviewed so far ever referencing the fact that Area 51 was a S.H.I.E.L.D. base, but maybe it has happened. It's just, you know, there's been so much. And we learn a sad truth that Simmons reveals, and that is we always jump after the Chronicons, meaning we are always one step behind. The Chronicons jump somewhere and they have a plan. We jump to that same location, but we need to figure out what they are planning, so we're never gonna be able to be ahead of them. However, there might be a thing that they are after here called Helios, so we need to stop whatever is gonna happen. So we kidnap a guy named Sharp in order for Coulson to get his ID, and also Gemma pretends to be Peggy Carter, which is like, that's a bit of an insult. Her breast side was way bigger, so maybe you should have stuffed a little bit to make it look a little bit more realistic. But they go inside Area 51 in order to figure out who the Chronicons are, and then they come up with the perfect plan, and that is the fact that Chronicons can't really do emotions well. So we gotta make them cry, boys. So we do that. However, we got a set of new arrivals, so Coulson goes off in order to make them cry as well. However, we got a special visitor. Good old Agent Sousa is back, baby. Yes, indeed. However, when he hears that Peggy's here, he gets all excited. His tail starts waggling. However, when he sees her, it's like, oh, no, you're not Peggy. But he still goes along. He's like, oh, the famous Peggy Carter. My name is Daniel. Your last name wouldn't happen to be Sousa, would it? Yeah, okay, I'm in trouble. I love that as well. So they get caught, sadly enough. So then Daisy has to go in to pretend to be from the CIA in order to be able to free them. So that's fun. Also, back on the ship, the squad is trying to interrogate good old Sharp, but it doesn't really work because of the fact that he will not take an order from one of the colored ones or a foreigner. So like, we send in the black guy, we send in, I don't remember what Yo-Yo was, but we send in her, we send in the Asian to get him to talk. So they come up with the idea, maybe we should set in the white guy, you know, looking at the time period we're in. I understand. So Deke goes in, but also really gets nowhere. However, the dude does spill the fact that Helios doesn't work, and that is when Deke is like, oh, but a Chronicom could get it to work, and they're gonna turn Helios into a bomb in order to blow everything up. So we need to stop them. Meanwhile, Sousa takes Daisy to Coulson and Simmons, opens the door. However, when the alarms start blaring, Coulson grabs Sousa, throws him in the cell, closes the door, and now we have to stop them. Also, big fan, by the way. I am also a big fan. And it seems like after the end of season 2 of Agent Carter, it did not really work out between Peggy and Sousa, sadly enough. But that was already confirmed later on anyway, because of Winter Soldier. So May and Yo-Yo infiltrate the base in order to, well, as pilots, in order to find the Chronicons and stop them, because apparently female pilots is not such a weird thing in this timeline, which is kind of weird because women are still looked down upon, but women pilots are not. I mean, it is historically accurate, I guess, so it's just a little bit weird, where it's like, why the pilots though, but not anyone else? A woman cannot be a secret agent, but she can be a pilot. Like, Peggy Carter was completely, like, pushed down, and the women pilots are pushed up. You know what? Whatever. You know, also, we are kind of a couple of years, like about 10 years or so, 8 maybe, removed from the end of Agent Carter Season 2. So maybe, you know, maybe it's gotten better for the women. Who's to say? I mean, nowadays it is, but back in the day, I don't know. I didn't live it. But they throw in some smoke bombs in order to flush out the Chronicom. However, one little problem, well, two technically, but let's deal with the first one. And that is the fact that May, because of all these people, has some panic attacks because of the fact of when she was in the other realm. So that doesn't really help. Yo-Yo also is too afraid to use her powers, or she can't use her powers. She tries, but she then stops. So that doesn't work either. So May and Yo-Yo get out because they're both having a bit of a panic attack. So once everyone is outside, who is the Chronicom? It's her. So May and Yo-Yo follow her in order to stop her. Meanwhile, the rest of the squad goes back inside in order to be able to stop, maybe, the Helios. And it actually can work because Simmons sees a big EMP device that is completely wrongly wired. So now Simmons has to fix it, obviously. So she does that. Another Chronicom appears. So Coulson goes off to fight that one. Apparently, Sousa freed himself and he's like, "Hey, you two, stop fighting, okay?" And then he hits the Chronicom, but it doesn't really work because, you know, robot and all. However, then the EMP gets to work. However, it knocks out Coulson as well. And then when the other Chronicom is knocked out, he turns to liquid. Also, May and Yo-Yo were having a lot of struggle fighting the Chronicom, so good thing the EMP knocked that one out as well. Turns to jelly or whatever it turns into. So the day is kind of saved. However, we're still here. We're still in this timeline. And also, Coulson's eye goes black and white. So, I don't know what that means. Maybe it means something, who's to say. And then to end the episode with the post-credit scene, Mac and Deke, they drop off Sharp, and then they pretend to be aliens and threaten him with probing. So then he goes back into the bar. It's like, aliens! And they were commies! And, oh no. So everyone thinks he's insane. So whatever he says will never be taken with the truth because of the fact that, and because he is like, oh, they were from the future. It's like, yeah, no, he's an insane guy. But at least we were able to save that part, but we are still in this timeline. So let's see how we get out of it, shall we? So is this whole 2 episodes per time period going to be a thing for the whole season or not? Because it does seem that way, because once again, we are in part 2 of the 1955. We are in July of 1955, and on this day, Sousa dies, boys! At least in the sacred timeline, Daniel Sousa, sadly enough, passed away. Well, not passed away, was shot to death, actually, in the original timeline. R.I.P. the boy. And that's also how the episode starts off. It shows us the correct timeline. However, then Coulson wakes up and is caught by Sousa, and also, we're in Noir, baby! Yes, indeed. Basically, you could say we are in New York Noir. The sequel everyone wanted to LA Noir. But yeah, everything is black and white. And I am still looking for Nicolas Cage's Spider-Man, to be honest. But yeah, everything is black and white. That was what the tease was at the end of the last episode with the eye thing. But like I said, this is the day that Sousa turned into the first fallen hero. He delivers a package and afterwards he is shot. So Coulson pretends to be his contact for the package so that they can get the package together. And then also he needs to make a call. However, he can't really call the Zephyr with a phone like that. So he calls Enoch instead, who is still at the bar. What a guy. And he desperately wants to come back to S.H.I.E.L.D, but he keeps being ignored. But he has a way to link the phone to the Zephyr. And the team now has to find the device that one of the scientists that the Chronicom hunter from the last episode was impersonating. We need to find out where that package is. So Yo-Yo and Deke get sent to his house. Yo-Yo finds the body and the package. Meanwhile, Deke gets captured by someone unknown at this moment, but they did not really react like Chronicom hunters, so I don't think that is what they are. But we are at this moment in the episode thinking they are most certainly Russian. Also, Coulson has to meet the team on the train, but when the team is a no-show, Coulson just steals someone's case in order to be able to, you know, pretend like that is the one that they need. So then they sit down in a different place of the train, and now they have to basically wait to get to their destination. However, Sousa is like, I'm gonna go and grab something to drink, okay? Goodbye. And when he leaves, a hunter shows up, the main guy, I guess, and he's like, Coulson, I know who you are, you know who I am, okay? Look, I'll make it very simple. Give us Earth and the human race might survive. That kind of stuff. And Coulson's like, yeah, that's not gonna happen at all. Meanwhile, Sousa meets up with this beautiful woman. However, turns out she is a spy for the quote-unquote Russians. So then we have a bit of a fight on the train, and then the gang joins in because they are here. Zephyr is above the train, and they save Sousa, and then they go into the Zephyr with Sousa. And then Sousa gives us the bomb drop. And that is the fact that apparently within S.H.I.E.L.D. there is, brace yourself, Hydra. Shocking, I know, but everyone's like, yeah, we know. Yep, that's look, Winter Soldier was about like years ago, okay? That was about a long time ago, actually, now I think about it. It was like 2014. God, that was 2014! Anyway, yeah, we know. We know that they are the bad guys, okay? We know they're Hydra. Okay, it's been a long time knowing, even in this series, because technically they left in 2019, so it's been about 5 years since they've known. And we also get the reveal that apparently the people who killed Sousa were not Russians. They were pretend Russians because they were actually Hydra. Meanwhile, Deke was also kidnapped by Hydra, and he gets brought to Malik. However, since it's been about 20 years, he doesn't recognize Deke anymore until he shoots one of his guys because the fact that apparently he wasn't competent. And then Deke is like, I saved you back 20 years ago. He was like, yeah, you did. Here's your case. Goodbye. Leave now. Next time I see you, I'll kill you. But you did save my life, so I will now save your life. Now we are square, even. And Deke then leaves. Meanwhile, May has had some issues in, well, throughout the last couple episodes. However, she also starts having issues when she meets Sousa, and also when she saw what's inside of the briefcase as well. Which, by the way, I forgot to say, Yo-Yo grabbed the briefcase from the dude's house and brought it back to S.H.I.E.L.D. I forgot to say that one, but anyway, she has the powers of feeling other people's feelings through touch. So, yeah, of course. We're gonna give May superpowers, and if we are, we're gonna make it the lamest ones. One of those lame ones. However, she also felt something from Sousa, but before we get into that, Mac has a plan. He's gonna save Sousa, at least we are. However, what May felt was the fact that Sousa wanted to leave. So Sousa leaves, we have to go after him in order to save him. Sousa delivers the package, then walks away. However, then he gets iced by Coulson. Coulson then takes his place, gets shot in the back, and falls in the water. So that history still remembers that Daniel Sousa died at this point in time. So that the timeline is not all screwy, you know? However, we have kidnapped Sousa, and now we are going to jump again. But first, we need to fix Coulson's eye thing. So, Color's back in town, baby. Color is back. We got that baby back. And now we have to leave. And also Coulson kind of catches Sousa up about everything. And we are gonna go to the 1970s, early 1970s. And also in the post-credit scene, the main hunter guy, he goes over to Malik and he will help him defeat S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever. I don't know. He's gonna help him in some way, shape, or form. So that is also a way. And by the way, this hunter was left behind while everyone else transported away. But he's gonna make life a living hell for us in the next episode, isn't he? Man, that intro was fantastic. I loved every second of it. Man, I miss when they were doing intros for TV series. Don't you guys miss them? Just like nice intros with like, you know, the actors' names and like seeing a shot from the show. Man, that was it back in the day, but we don't have that anymore. It felt like a nice little thing to watch again, you know? Maybe that's just me. Anyway, we are in the year 1973 and we need to get some new clothes. However, Sousa doesn't like the new clothes, so he keeps being in suit. And then we go to the bar to find Enoch. However, apparently there's a party going on here. And also, apparently, Malik is supposed to be dead, so that is at least a good thing. Something that we can put off our chest. You know, the daddy Malik is dead. However, Simmons has 3 dots on her neck, so there is something mysterious about that one. Meanwhile, Mac and Yo-Yo went to the lighthouse for some alone time, but the problem is they're not alone because something is being built here. And also, Enoch is not at the bar, so where is he? And if there is even worse news, it turns out that Daddy Malik is not dead. He is actually alive, and he started Project Insight, which will not be completed for another 3 years, but still, Insight. That is with the soldier, dude. That isn't supposed to happen until 2014 when Captain America stops it. Also, Daisy meets Gideon Malik, and he is still just the worst, just like he is in the future. Or will be, because we are kind of in a weird way right now. I mean, we weren't in an alternate timeline, but now we are. Officially, this starts us on a new timeline. One of those, like, branched paths. Because beforehand, we slightly changed history. Kind of. And basically, we just inserted ourselves into the timeline, but we were able to preserve the timeline. Like letting Malik go and deliver the super soldier serum so that Red Skull can be made, I guess. And also the fact that Sousa was actually, quote-unquote, shot dead, so everyone knows that Sousa is dead. All those things still kept the timeline going. But now, with this episode, we are officially kind of in a split timeline. That's at least the way that I see it, unless it gets explained. Which I hope they do towards the end of this season, where they explain it, where it's like, we're gonna go back to our timeline, and that this is actually an alternate timeline. I do hope that they actually explain that stuff, because we need some explanations. However, Sousa is able to get Daisy away from Gideon Malik by being like, honey, this is where you are. I am your fiance and everything. Let's go away, honey. So they get into a secret room. They find out that there's a new list for Project Insight, and it still is technically the same list as before. Like, Bruce Banner is on there, who is right now a child. However, sadly enough, Coulson and May, they get caught by Malik, because now he remembers them, even though 20 years ago he didn't remember them earlier, but at least now he does. However, Daisy has a plan in order to rescue them, and that is the fact she's gonna use Nathaniel, you know, the son who is also supposed to be dead, because of the fact that, if you remember, Gideon cheated during that one part so that Nathaniel would die. She uses him in order to be able to escape. However, Daisy then has to use her powers on the Chronicoms, which also Sousa sees her powers, but Nathaniel is also someone who sees her powers, so that is going to be a bit of an issue. So then Enoch arrives in a very cool car, and now we need to get away from here. So we do that. We get back to base. Everything seems fine until the timer decides to change while everyone is a bit arguing. And it turns out we're about to jump because the Chronicoms are about to jump. And we don't know where. Turns out, yeah, how about we do a 3-year time skip, boys? Because of the fact that we don't want to wait 3 years for Project Insight to launch. Let's get to 1976 now. Also, Simmons is forgetting, which is part of the whole neck problem. And the gang now has to leave in order to stop Project Insight, and they will be diverted into different teams. Starting off, we have Daisy and Souza. They're gonna be the hacking team. And when I say hacking team, I mean Daisy is going to be on the hacking team. Meanwhile, Souza backs her up to keep evil people away, which he doesn't really do a good job of. Meanwhile, Coulson and May are gonna go inside of the lighthouse in order to stop Project Insight by bombing it. If you can't beat them, bomb them. And then Yo-Yo and Deke are gonna head over to Malik in order to capture him. And while this is happening, the hunter returns to Malik and gives him an envelope. So that is a little bit of an issue potentially. So Daisy hacks, she gets in, we have views everywhere, and she starts opening the doors, and Coulson and May go inside. However, then Nathaniel shoots them with one of those Chronicom guns and captures them, mainly Daisy because that's the one that he wants. And now May and Coulson can continue on their journey. However, they find Stoner. They try to ask him for help. However, because of May's feeling powers, yeah, he doesn't believe them. So May knocks him out, and then we grab his key card in order to gain access. We get to the location. We plant the bombs. We're ready to bomb them, boys. However, at this point also, Deke and Yo-Yo are at Malik's, and he doesn't want to come with them. And then Deke shoots Malik dead, which, good thing, like that, because he's supposed to be dead anyway, so who cares? However, then Yo-Yo opens up the envelope, and what is inside is what Max sees on the cameras. Apparently, they have captured alternate versions of this universe's version, I guess you could say, of Max's parents. So he tells the mission needs to go abort. So they abort the mission. However, Coulson and May are caught, sadly enough. And Zephyr 1 reveals its position in order to stop Project Insight by blowing it up. And then in the post-credit scene, Malik calls back to Hydra, I guess. He wants to speak to Whitehall because he wants to transfer powers because he desperately wants Daisy's powers. So, yeah, we are just into the fire. The fire's only started burning. Alright, now this is a woman I haven't talked about yet, or Chronicom, I guess, but her name is S.H.I.E.L.D, or Sibyl, or whatever you pronounce that. I apologize. But she's the one who's basically the god of time, as you could say. She kind of sees the time stream and sees what the Chronicoms have to do next in that sense. So you could kind of call her the leader of the Chronicoms if you need be. However, she seems to know exactly what S.H.I.E.L.D is going to do next. And also, we have to activate more hunters. So the past S.H.I.E.L.D at the lighthouse can apparently track the Zephyr because some upgrades have been made. And Mac and Yo-Yo go into the lighthouse in order to save the parents, baby. They break open a wall and they get the parents out. However, it's funny, Mac instantly hugs his mom and is like, "What are you doing, man? This is my wife." But then they need to get out of there. However, then they come up to a locked door and we have a little bit of a bonding moment between Mac and Daddy, which is very nice. However, what is not nice is the fact that Stoner doesn't want to listen to Coulson and May. So then the system kind of starts having a mind of its own, and it targets the Zephyr and shoots rockets at it, which is not what they wanted to do. At least Stoner's like, no, don't do that yet. Not until I give the orders. But then, oh, it's like, I didn't give the orders yet, but it's fired anyway. Meanwhile, Malik has both Daisy and Souza, and he basically just decides to explain his whole plan. He's gonna Whitehall Daisy in order to transfer the powers, kind of what Whitehall did to her mom. Like mother, like daughter, as you could say. And also, the squad is drugged out. Daisy and Souza, they are both drugged out, understandably so that he thinks both of them have superpowers because Souza hasn't aged a day since he was supposed to die. And well, we all know that Daisy has powers, but he wants Daisy's powers. And if she's not drugged out, she might be able to use her powers, which is not a good thing. Not something we want to happen. We need to make sure that that one stays in its box, if you know what I mean. Also, the Zephyr is able to block 2 of the 3 missiles, but they get hit by the 3rd, and now the time thing is kind of out of whack. A couple of cables gone loose, so now if they jump, only a part of the Zephyr will jump, not the whole Zephyr. So yeah, we kind of need to fix that. However, Gemma's memory loss keeps getting worse, so Enoch takes her to a place in order to fix it. However, Deke also enters the room. He sees that there's something inside of Gemma, so he grabs some clear machines. I don't know what you call those things, and he uses them on Enoch because he thinks that Enoch is a traitor. here. And then it's like, well, you done ruined everything. So now they have to fix the Zephyr without knowing how to fix the Zephyr because of the fact that, you know, she started to lose her memory. So Coulson and May get put in a room together and they are questioned by Stoner. However, the questioning doesn't really go all that well because he doesn't want to believe us. And also, another woman walks in named King and Stoner needs to come with her. However, when they leave, May is like, she is one of them Chronocombs, because I did not feel any feelings from her. And it's like, initially there's a little bit of fight about it. However, then later on Coulson's like, wait, they said that they'd adapt. Oh no, the Chronocombs are adapting to what Coulson is. So now they can also copy personalities. Yes, to anyone questioning, they are indeed using the memory machine from the last season. I'll get more about that at the end of this video. Just a thing that popped into my head right now. I'll talk about it more later on. But now Coulson and May have to break out in order to save Stoner because he will be their next target. So they go down there in order to save Stoner, and they do. They save him. He gets out of the machine. He's like, I believe you. I believe you. I believe you. Okay, I believe you. I'm on your side now. I am 100% on your side. However, Coulson doesn't want to leave. He wants Stoner and May to get out of there, but he himself doesn't want to leave. So he takes one of the bags with the bombs and decides to go down the hole because apparently the Chronicom ship, instead of being in the sky, it's on the ground. So he goes there in order to have a little bit of a chat with S.H.I.E.L.D, and she tries to pretend to know everything, and also the fact that humans, they fear death, which is why they are supposed to die, so the Chronocoms can take over. And it's like, really? Okay, you are just pure evil. I'll just say that right now. Is this how you took over that other planet? Or was that just a free planet to take? Because of the fact that there was another planet, your last planet, that got blown up by S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, is that you or not? Is that also what you did? You took over that planet? Is that what you did? We never really get an answer about that one. I am still curious about that one, though. However, Coulson talks about the good parts about humanity. 3 points. And the third one is the fact that, well, he's not necessarily afraid to die. So then he gets out of the machine, and the hunters are like, someone is accessing the high one. So then Coulson's like, let's hope May's right about the fact that I can come back. And he blows up the ship, which makes me go, how are they then able to time jump? Also, the implant, I don't know if I explained it yet. The implant is there so that Gemma doesn't remember the location of Fitz, because Fitz is in a very open space, let's just say that. So if he gets discovered, there's nowhere really to hide, so he can die. But eventually Enoch gets back up after they save the ship, and Deke says sorry, and the memory thing is fixed. However, Nathaniel has operated on Daisy, so now he has quaking powers. Also, Daisy had a little bit of a shard so that Sousa could escape with her. But anyway, he has some quaking powers. However, he's like, it feels like my bones are quaking apart, and then he brings the building on top of him, and then Sousa escapes with Daisy. Everyone makes it back to the ship in time. However, there's one party that I kind of forgot about, because Mac and his parents, and also Yo-Yo, escape. However, upon the ship, and also May figures out that your parents are Chronocoms, because I couldn't feel anything from them. So then it gets revealed. We have a little bit of a fight. Basically, Mac has to kill both of his parents, even though his actual parents are already dead. R.I.P. the parents. But they eventually also make it back to the Zephyr. Now that everyone's back, we can time jump, boys. However, when we do, Mac is like, I need some alone time. So he goes outside, rides on his bike, gets a little bit further away from the Zephyr. However, what they did not expect was an instant second jump. So now that Mac and Deke are outside, we jump away again. So bye, boys. R.I.P. the boss, I guess. We've lost him to time itself. I don't know if we'll ever see Mac again this season, but who knows? Maybe we will. Here we are, boys. The totally excellent adventures of Mac and the D, baby. Are you kidding me? Of course, with a title like that, it is a must-watch episode, of course. However, we start off in the future, and May wants to know what happened to Deke. And they were stranded in 1982. But first, let's go to a different guy. A loser. One of those actual losers named Russell. He gets a computer in that apparently is broken. However, it is not really broken. Sybil is in there. Or Sybil is in there. And he has to help her get out of it. Meanwhile, let's actually start off with where we ended the last episode. Deke goes up to Mac, tells him about what happened, like, it just disappeared. And then Mac is like, I don't need you, and drives off. He goes over to his parents' grave, mourns for a bit, heads over to his uncle's house, and he sees his younger self. However, he drives off, and apparently he has a house in this timeline. Sure. Like, where did he get that house from? Could somebody explain that to me? Anyway, he has a house. He opens the door with keys, by the way, and he stays here for the next, well, long time. And he builds model cars. Yay, little model cars. Very nice. Meanwhile, Deke tries to visit him over and over and over again in order to connect, but Mac doesn't want it, and Deke even buys groceries. With what money? We'll find out. But he buys groceries, and Mac doesn't want it at all. It's very sad for Deke, actually, but Mac has totally shut himself off of anything. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D has now a body with Kit's bar. And for Kit who doesn't know, that's Knight Rider, boys. The Kit bar. She has that in her eye. Dude, come on, man. You know I'm picking up on that Knight Rider reference. This is 1982. That is also, I think, when Knight Rider began airing back in the day, dude. Which is, for anyone wondering, my personal favorite show. And I do not like the fact that it says here on Wikipedia that the series has received a cult following. No, I'm not part of a cult, okay? But it started in 1982. How nice. And since we're in 1982, we gotta have the reference because of the fact... I mean, to be honest, I would have liked the reference to the A-Team as well, looking at the fact that that one started a year later in 1983, and we have been here for 20 months! Which I'm kind of curious how Mac was able to keep the house for 20 months, but sure, whatever. But it would have been nice, a nice little reference to to the A-Team. But we got Knight Rider, you know, at least we got something. Okay, which by the way, I am actually very excited to do some episode talks for that one as well, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I will actually, once I am done with what I want to do for the MCU. Well, once we catch up to the MCU and I do the next 3 projects that I have planned after the MCU, I'm gonna start doing episode talks for Knight Rider on Thursday, while in the background I'll be working on something, but more information about that later. So eventually Mac has to leave his house. However, he finds a note that Deke left for him, and it says he needs to go to the bar. So Mac goes to the bar, and a band is gonna play, and of course it's Deke. Deke has a band, and he's doing plagiarism on songs that don't even exist yet. Why wouldn't he? But he has basically been doing this for the past 20 months. Apparently he is just a band. He's a band. Oh, he has a band. And Mac berates him for it, understandably. By the way, Mac, I understand why you want to go with the Kratos look, but you're missing the red. Just a thing, okay? I understand. He goes for Daddy Kratos look because that is most certainly rebooted Kratos' look. I respect it, but you're missing the, you know, the red all over your body. Just saying. However, Deke tells Mac that no, this is not just a band. It is also the new edition of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because apparently he has been training these guys in the Lighthouse. And also, Coulson's alive, apparently. He was on a hard drive that Deke found, and he's now on a TV for the rest of this episode. So that's nice. However, he also knows that S.H.I.E.L.D is still out there. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D has built a couple of robots for herself, and she kills Russell because of the fact that she doesn't need him anymore. Meanwhile, Deke shows Mac the gauntlet, which fails spectacularly. And then afterwards, he shows him a new shotgun axe, and it's absolutely beautiful. But Mac doesn't want to join, and he just wants to leave because he keeps berating Deke and the team about the fact that Deke really just only kind of cares about himself and wants attention. So then when he is about to leave, S.H.I.E.L.D attacks the lighthouse because of the fact that right here is where the time stream device is. And the drummer gets taken out instantly, who sells coke, you know, the nice drink. No, not really though. So then Roxy goes over to Mac and tells him what Deke has been doing, and the fact that Deke has been taking care of Mac's son. And he's like, excuse me, what? My what? Yeah, he looks just like a younger version of you, which means Deke has been taking care of younger Mac, showing that he truly does care. And I love this sequence. However, we can't get lost in the moment because robot attack. So then Mac gets back into the fight. He takes care of one of the robots, and he suits up. He becomes the leader again, and he gets his shotgun axe, and it's time to roll, baby. Time to fight back. And we do. We fight back. We take care of all of the robots. Sadly enough, S.H.I.E.L.D was able to escape with the time drive, so that is a bit sad. So then to end the episode, Mac gives a model car to his younger version of himself. Oh my god. I wrote in my notes son. To son. Who's son? He doesn't have a son. That's his younger version. I wrote that because in the episode they Roxy called it his son. So I wrote son. Why did I do that? And then the Zephyr arrives. May and Yo-Yo get on to the Quinjet in order to pick up Mac and Deke. Apparently this is when we have to reveal that they've been gone for 20 months. And then with the post-credit scene, we have the fact that Malik is still alive. So I guess getting the powers worked. And S.H.I.E.L.D is just like Coulson on a television. And S.H.I.E.L.D is now working with Nathaniel Malik. By the way, when I said Malik, I meant Nathaniel, not the daddy. Okay? Just saying. But now they are working together. So, yeah, we got about 6 episodes left. So we got some time before we have to stop them. Of all the people to bring back back. I never thought I'd see your face again because S.H.I.E.L.D is back, baby. Was that the tease that they did like 2 episodes ago when Daisy was like, S.H.I.E.L.D, you know, when she was basically calling for her mommy in that sense? Was that the tease that we were gonna go back to Afterlife in order to get Yo-Yo fixed? Because, like, it doesn't even have anything to do with Daisy. Anyway, yes, that is what this episode is going to be about. But first, let's see how the team's perspective was while everything was happening. Basically, the team got transported into the future, and then again, and then again, and they keep doing it because apparently we are kind of like a skipping stone, as you could say. We're skipping over time. However, eventually that stone is going to sink into the water. That skips the water. So eventually we are gonna be sinking in as well, and that is something that we cannot have. So we jump away from Mac, and then we jump, I think, like 2 more times, and then Yo-Yo and May leave in order to pick up Mac and D. And then we jump again, like instantly they found them, they're back. Alright, boys, that was fast. Didn't expect it to be done that quickly. However, the only way to save us is to fix Yo-Yo. She needs to get her powers back because she's the only one who can go in between when slow time is happening in order to be able to stop it. And in order to do that, we have to go to Afterlife, baby. But only May and Yo-Yo are going to go because of the fact that they are the only ones that are needed. And also, we can't really bring too many people, you know, with the whole future kind of being in jeopardy. To be honest, bringing May is already kind of problematic because, like, you know, we can bring Deke. We can probably bring Mac. Maybe bring Mac. I got when he was introduced, though. But, like, did he ever see S.H.I.E.L.D in, like, season 2 of Ages of S.H.I.E.L.D? Because we might be able to bring him. But, like, we can bring Deke. You know, Deke and Yo-Yo can go because they weren't in season 2 of Ages of S.H.I.E.L.D. So they wouldn't really be recognizable. If S.H.I.E.L.D now sees May, then, like, years later, it's like May again. How did she not age? What is happening? That kind of stuff. But who cares, to be honest, because we're already in an alternate timeline thanks to what happened before, you know? So they head over to Afterlife. They get close. They land the jet, but keep it invisible, and then they leave the jet. However, when they do, they see a girl who is trying to run away from Afterlife, but she's being forced back. And then we also get captured. But since we are asking for S.H.I.E.L.D, she arrives, and basically Yo-Yo is like, look, I need your help in order to reactivate my inhuman powers. And yes, I am inhuman. And the one guy, I forgot, Lee, I think actually his name was. We're gonna call him Lee. Lee doesn't believe her, but then May speaks, like, I think it was Chinese in order to be able to convince them, and apparently that convinces them. So then they bring out one of those obelisks, and it's funny because, like, Yo-Yo picks it up and it does nothing. Like, it doesn't turn her to stone, but it also doesn't light up. So it's like, what is this? But it's like, oh right, prosthetic. My apologies. Touches her face, lights up. See, inhuman, officially confirmed. May, not an inhuman though. Also, we learned that the girl's name is Cora, and she does not want to be here at all. So S.H.I.E.L.D tries to, I don't know, she tries to do some stuff in order to get Yo-Yo back in working order, and also has taken some blood in order to see what is exactly wrong, and also maybe if she can use that in order, look, I'm gonna spoil it right now. She wants to use whatever stops Yo-Yo's powers in order to be able to stop Cora's powers because they are dangerous. However, there's nothing wrong with her blood at all. So the problem isn't physical, it's mental. She is just basically terrified. So now S.H.I.E.L.D also knows that May has powers somehow, but I guess it's because of that little slip earlier on. In order to get them to help, you know, she kind of maybe let it slip that she was a bit of an empath, but now she is officially empath. So she needs to use emotion in order to help Yo-Yo, and it's like, really, May, of all people, you're gonna ask her to do emotion stuff? That's gonna be fun. So initially they are sitting together, but it's not really working because it's not May's expertise. So instead, May has a different idea. We're gonna have some therapy fighting, baby, and we get some flashbacks from Yo-Yo from her past, from past seasons, and also from her past. Meanwhile, on the Zephyr, they're trying to fix the time thing, but it doesn't, or at least turn it off. Doesn't work. They can't turn it off, and also Simmons has a new leg for Sousa so that he doesn't need to, you know, walk the way that he walks. He could just walk normally. But like I said, none of the stuff that they're trying is working, so their last hope literally is Yo-Yo. So what happened back in the day? Let's go to a time in the past. So basically, her uncle made some shady deals, and one shady guy came to him, and he wanted to get paid, I guess, and he put like a cross necklace on the table as potential collateral. However, Elena then went out there, grabbed it, went back, and that caused her uncle to be shot and killed, and she blames herself for that. So it just doesn't work. Nothing works in order to get her powers back, sadly enough. Even the therapy session with May doesn't work. So Cora eventually explodes and escapes with a gun apparently, and then May is like, oh no, she's not gonna use that gun in order to kill people. She's gonna use that bad boy on herself. And she does. She goes outside, she aims the gun at herself. However, then it gets quaked apart, and I was like, Daisy! I completely forgot about Nathaniel because Malik is here, boys. And he asks her to join him, and she does. And afterwards, they go and attack Afterlife, thanks also to the power of S.H.I.E.L.D. However, we help Zhaijing escape, and also we're gonna meet up with her at a later date in order to help her fight against Nathaniel. So Zhaijing and Gordon younger Gordon teleport away. By the way, a lot of this stuff actually did happen in the Sacred Timeline, because what actually did happen is the fact that yes, Zhaijing did have a daughter named Korra. However, instead of, you know, being stopped by Malik, she actually went through with it. So that means that Daisy's sister offed herself for Daisy. So they're flying. However, sadly enough, they missed the jump window. So now they need to go to the next one. However, they don't really know where the plane is going to teleport. So they could be teleported like right inside of the plane or under the plane or whatever. We're in trouble. However, also because of how little time we have left, we need to land it in one shot, and May does. She lands it in one shot barely, and we are able to be with the squad again. However, Yo-Yo is still not fixed, so we can't fix the ship. So everybody has to abandon ship, boys. Everyone to the Quinjet so we can escape. However, then Yo-Yo comes up with the idea of the fact that she needs to stop bouncing back, and she now can just be like the Flash and Quicksilver. She can run. She runs at super speed, takes out the power source, saves the day, and she doesn't bounce back. And apparently she's always been able to do that, but her fear led her to always bounce back. That is why she did that stuff, but she basically always had super speed, which, to be honest, I like the bouncing back more, but whatever. Anyway, we are so close to the end of the show, I don't care anymore, okay? I'll give her this W. So everyone's like, yay, we did it. Also, I like how earlier in the episode we asked Coulson for help, who was half a man, but we just turned him on, and it's like, you really couldn't have waited till I was finished, right? Until I was complete, until I wasn't half the man I used to be. Yeah, okay. And also throughout this episode, Coulson is just drinking a glass of water. I don't know why. He keeps just drinking. I mean, to be honest, he's been like without any water or anything to drink for about 20 months. However, why water? You know, you can drink other stuff. But the day seems to be saved. Daisy goes back into the healing chamber in order to heal. And then we have a little bit of a problem, because the fact that the time drive once again activates and we jump again. So, yeah, that whole promise to Zhaijing that we're gonna help her. Yeah, maybe we can't really keep that promise, you know? Oh boy, we are in a bit of a trouble, aren't we? My goodness, this episode was emotional, man. I will say this, up until like the last episode, I don't think I've ever seen, and if I have never seen this episode. I will tell you that much right now. I have never seen this episode, so I either got up until the last episode or the episode before that, before I was done, I guess. But man, I never seen this episode. Who's ready for a bit of time looping, baby? Because yes, we are in a time storm, indeed. We're in a time storm. Mac gets blinded. Yo-Yo is trapped in the Quinjet. However, no matter what happens, each time we reset, but Daisy remembers what happened. So she goes over to Coulson later on in order to activate him, and he's like, oh, for crying out loud, did you die again? Because apparently we've been doing this for way longer. Each time Daisy dies, she forgets, and they have to do the loop again, which is just funny because Coulson's like, I'm sick of explaining this to you. We went through this already. The problem is, you never activate me, okay? You don't activate me always, which, you know, we've already seen in some of these loops, but basically, we now need to figure out a way to break the loop, and the time drive is what is looping us. However, what's inside the ship keeps looping, but the outside doesn't, because we keep getting pulled closer, and by the way, once we get to the vortex, we die. So, we are still on a time limit. It's not like we're trapped. We are trapped, and we're on a time limit, and if Daisy dies, she forgets. So, after a lot of resets, we eventually figured out that Simmons's implant, once removed, might be the key to stopping everything. So they try it. Simmons goes inside this room in order to remove the thing, but she dies. So what killed her? Daisy decides to go in with her, which I'm like, are you stupid or something like that? Let Coulson do it. He's a machine. Like, it doesn't matter. He's a machine. Why don't we just let Coulson go in? But no, Daisy goes in and she dies. So she has to relearn everything again, which was actually pretty funny. However, who is trying to kill the team because it was a deliberate cut of a gas thing. So basically, there's gas filling up the room and that's what's killing him. And it was a deliberate cut. So there's a killer on board. Who is it? So now we need to spend some time in order to figure that out. Maybe Yo-Yo can remove the implant because she has the super speed now. Problem is, she hasn't really understood the power of going through walls. So we need to unlock the door. The problem is, doing that takes too long. So we cannot rely on that option. So in another one, Daisy asks Sousa for help. However, grabbing the scanner kills him. So who is really the killer? Well, it has to be one of the three. It's either Simmons, who it's less likely. We have Deke, who is also technically less likely, and Enoch. So we get them all in a room, and while we are looking at them, Daisy's gonna remove the implant. Turns out it's Enoch. So now we need to figure out a way to keep Enoch distracted so that we can remove the implant. However, we keep being beaten up by him over and over and over again. So that doesn't work either. Until we figure out what we need to do in order to get it to work. We need to get the team to distract him in some way. So the plan is simple. Sousa goes over to Simmons, tells her everything in order for the implant to be removed. So Sousa then leaves, luring Enoch with him, while Daisy and Coulson go and remove the implant. But we get Enoch trapped and the rest of the squad basically has to fight Enoch now. So we remove the implant. We do it the second time, not the first time. And we get the answer. We need to remove Enoch's heart, basically. His heart can stop this. However, while that is also happening, Sims is like, oh my god, what have I done? Fitz, I'm so sorry. What did I do? It's like, okay, we'll get back to you in momentarily. Don't worry about it. We will get back to you, because what did she do? I am actually curious. So now we have to kill Enoch. And I mean officially kill Enoch. Because like for me, when we killed Enoch in the future in order to time travel, I already watched season 6. I knew he was gonna be back. I knew the boy himself was gonna be back. And also, even if I didn't know, he was still in space with Fitz. So he could be back. But yeah, about that. This one can't though. So Enoch removes his heart. He just rips it out. He's just like, here you go. Fix it. So Deke goes to fix it because the team is kind of arguing about it. And now Enoch is going to die. And Coulson and Daisy stay with him up until the end. And it's a beautiful ending. They even do a little bit of a Spider-Man thing from Infinity War where it's like, oh, I don't feel so good kind of thing. But then Enoch's version. But it is sad because, you know, I like Enoch. Even though he killed Daisy a couple of times and, you know, attacked everyone a lot of times. But I still like him. In the end, he still did the right thing by going against the Chronicoms and helping Fitz and Simmons develop a way to stop the Chronicoms, you know? And I even felt bad when we left him in that one timeline for about 40 years. I felt bad about that. It was sad, but now he's gonna go. And Enoch is also gonna give Daisy a spoiler, and that is the fact that this is your last mission, by the way, as a team. And it's like, well, yeah, this is the last season. Of course, the last mission. But apparently after this, the team will not survive. The members will survive, but basically the team will disband once this is done. And yeah, that's also a little bit sad. But then Enoch dies, so RIP the boy. However, Deke does get the thing working, so we go back to 1983. At least that's what the summary said on Disney Plus about the next episode. And then to end the episode with the post-credit scene, we have the fact that Malik has apparently been training Korra. And I'm like, what is this? Like, Jia couldn't have done this? Why is he able to train the Legend of Korra? Well, Jia couldn't. Like, that's so stupid. Whatever. Don't care. Anyway, we're gonna go back to that storyline in the next episode. So Malik goes over to recruit young Garrett because now that we are done with the time loop, we can continue on with the main story. And also, apparently, Roxy plus the rest of the band has officially joined S.H.I.E.L.D. So that is nice to hear. Good job, Deke Squad. However, she says one thing that kind of gets everyone's ears perking, and that is the fact that maybe she'll be transported to the Triskelion. It's like, wait, what? That thing isn't supposed to exist yet. What do you mean? Ah, boy, this timeline is all sorts of whack. However, now we have to save the future, at least of this timeline. So, it's time to bring Jia to the lighthouse, which she instantly teleports in with Gordon, so that's nice, in order for everything to work. So, the plan is gonna be simple. Gordon teleports Coulson into Afterlife in order to do some recon. So, they get in and instantly get caught. That was not part of the plan, but it's because Malik saw the future, so, dang. Daisy also learns because of the fact that Jia is talking about her sister, basically. You know, her sister that kind of offed herself in the future, at least in the main timeline. And that is when I think actually Daisy's the one who lays the link down, and it's like, without Korra's you know, sad events, Jing would have never gone off to meet her dad, and she would have never been born. Because the fact that Korra died allowed Jing to leave Afterlife so that she could meet, I forgot his name, and Daisy. Yeah, how's that gonna happen in this timeline though? Korra's evil and she's alive, so maybe Jing is not gonna leave Afterlife after all. Yeah, boy. Also, Malik found a better way to transfer the powers from one person to another, because the whole cutting them open into pieces, it's a bit messy. Also, Simmons starts to kind of think that maybe Fitz is dead or something bad happened to Fitz, because of the fact of Daisy tells her, hey, so what actually happened to Fitz? Because when we removed your implant, you just started to cry. You just started to cry uncontrollably, okay? And you were saying some stuff where it's like, what have I done? So, yeah, what maybe he's gone? So, Zeke then convinces her, don't worry about it, Fitz is fine, he has to be fine, okay? So then Garrett gets Gordon's power. However, once the potential of the baby blues being gone, he kind of wants to cancel, but don't worry about it. He does not lose his eyesight, which actually I would have liked a lot more. And also, Sousa, great man himself, he convinces Daisy to talk to her mom. Because who cares? We're in an alternate timeline anyway. So what's the harm in talking to your alternate timeline daughter, huh? Like what's the harm there? So talk to your mommy, okay? And if you need backup, I am here to back you up. So they go over to Jing, and instantly he breaks the ice by just going into it. Hey, she went to Afterlife. It's like, we don't let outsiders in, so then powers get revealed, and it's like, you taught me about 30 years from now. It's like, yes, season 2, technically, weirdly enough, still simpler times. Remember that when half the universe was still here? Technically right now half the universe is still here. But they have a nice talk, because this is before, you know, Jing became an insane lunatic, because that happened exactly when she was basically torn apart by Whitehall. That is what turned her from a loving woman into evil itself. So now Daisy can talk to her mom before she went all insane, and it's a very nice talk that they have. However, Daisy does not reveal that she's the daughter. However, she does reveal that my mom hurt me. Okay, my mom hurt me. I never knew my mom growing up, but my mom hurt me. And then she's like, I don't know why your mom did that. I'm like, kinda you do. You are that woman. But anyway, it's a nice talk. I'm happy that Daisy got this talk with her mom. So then Garrett teleports Malik into the lighthouse because they have a target there. And Garrett then goes off to face off against May because of the fact that they find each other. And apparently they're after something here, and the target seems to be Jing. So we have to protect her. So then Daisy tries to get her out. However, the problem is Malik is there, and he's just basically pulling out the Blu-ray set of season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and giving it to her because of the fact that he basically tells her everything that happens in season 2. You're the mom, and you're the one who hurts her, and her dad breaks your spine in order to save her. And it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, the one who hurt Daisy was you, Jing, and she's completely distraught because she cannot imagine her doing that. But also he's like, yeah, but that's because you were ripped apart by Hydra. You know, not really that fun. Left to pieces. Wasn't really a good day, was it? Then he blasts Daisy away, and he wants to kill her. However, Jing tries to use her powers on Malik, which works initially until he finds a little bit of strength enough to get free. And then he's like, don't get in my way. And then when she tries again, he breaks her neck. So Jing is dead. It's like, boy. No. How is this gonna work out now? How is the timeline gonna work now? Because basically, in this timeline, we have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. without Daisy. And Daisy was a big part in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, remember back in season 1? Like, we wouldn't have that. So what happens to Mike? You know, like, what happens to all this stuff? Then Garrett teleports in, kidnaps Simmons, teleports out. So, sadly enough, Sousa wasn't able to save her. Also, Gordon teleports Coulson out of the prison that they were in. And then Mac and Coulson and also Yo-Yo save the other Inhumans. However, Coulson goes off and kidnaps Korra, or takes her. I don't really know if it's kidnapping. And then to end the episode, they were not here specifically because of Simmons. They were also here for the Zephyr. So Malik steals the Zephyr. And we are in a bit of a tight spot. However, then in the post-credit scene, we get the official reveal of why Simmons was taken. I thought that maybe that was going to happen in the next episode, but at least we get to clear our conscience right now. And that is the fact that apparently, no matter what plan they do, there is always someone who gets in their way. Good old Fitz, boys! So they need to find out the location of Fitz in order to stop him so that he can stop them. So Fitz is in danger. Who could have seen that one coming? I saw that coming the moment that they said, Fitz needs to be protected, so I need to forget. I was like, okay, so they're eventually gonna force you to remember and then attack Fitz. It's a predictable thing, but I don't mind mind it. Because what matters is to see how it plays out. Okay, and I'm very interested to see how it plays out. 3 episodes left, baby. So the enemy has taken the Zephyr 1 into space so that we cannot track them anymore. And also Daisy is not playing around anymore. She just goes up to Cora and just quakes her to the wall and grabs her throat. However, Cora's then like, I want to be an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I'm like, excuse me, what? How did that happen? This has to be some kind of plan, doesn't it? Yes. Yes, it does. And yes, it is. Also, Deke gets instantly caught, so that really was nothing, was it? And finally, the squad gets the official reveal. We're in a new timeline, baby. Finally. Oh my god. It took so long. Like, I thought they were never gonna address it. But we are. We're not in the sacred timeline of the MCU anymore. We are now outside of the MCU, which I am so happy about that they actually say it, because I've always wanted them to say it since we figured it out back when Project Insight was way earlier in development. Since then, we've been in a different timeline, because the other ones were like ripples, kind of like the Avengers taking stones out of the timeline, you know? It's kind of like that. But yes, I am gonna spoil Endgame, because it's Endgame. It made like $18 billion. Everybody in the world has seen that movie. But like in Endgame, they go back into the past in order to grab the stone so they can undo what Thanos did. This is kind of basically the same thing, okay? Yes, we took Sousa out of the timeline, but we made sure that he was dead in the timeline first. We made sure that he died so that that story is still intact, so that it's ripples, not waves. Project Insight was the wave, so now we're drowning. But it's nice that everybody knows it. And also, according to Cora, the enemy wants to... I don't know what to call them, so I'm just gonna call them the enemy. Because no, back in the day, we had like, you know, Hydra or something like that. Now we don't have a name for these people, so we're just gonna call them the enemy. But they want to save everyone by killing about 30 bad people, which is like, that's not what's happening here at all. I've seen the end of the episode. I know that that's not what's happening. So Malik uses the memory machine on Simmons, but he gets really angry about the fact that it does not work. So he brings in Deke as collateral, and it still doesn't really work. She will not answer him. So then he forces her into the machine, and he goes in there with her, and we get to see kind of what happened. And it seems like basically they went into the future, maybe, in order to be able to be out, or they went outside of time in order to be able to build the time machine, Zephyr. And also Fitz, because of what Enoch said, was like, why don't we just take a break, Simmons? Like, why don't we just live our lives together as husband and wife in that sense? Why don't we just live, okay? We'll just live a bit, because it doesn't matter anyway. We could go back and save them whenever we want. Nothing matters. So they did that. Apparently they did live a life together, and then later on they get into the argument about the implant, and that is the fact that Fitz programmed the implant to do a little bit more, or at least the implant was programmed to do a little bit more than just forget the location. She also forgets all the time she has right now spent with Fitz, and she doesn't want to forget those moments. She just wants to forget the location. So she was a little bit against that, but I guess eventually went along with it, obviously, because she has the implant. However, sadly enough, Malik still doesn't get the location out of Simmons, and then he's like, fine, it doesn't matter anyway. And I'm like, but you said it mattered though, didn't you? Like, he said that it mattered. Like, Fitz will stop us. But now the plan is too far along, and I guess maybe what he means with the fact that it's like, it doesn't matter is the fact that maybe he has collateral. You know? He has Deke and Gemma. So, if Fitz tries anything, they're gonna die in that sense. And I guess that is also why Simmons was breaking down earlier, because she started to remember all of the time that she had with Fitz, and maybe also the ending where she didn't want to do it, but she had to do it, and she was basically sorry for the fact that she, you know, had to forget everything. But that is that storyline. So Daisy goes to talk to her sister, which doesn't necessarily go to plan, but also kind of does, because her sister gives Daisy an idea, and that's the fact that, look, they know exactly what we are going to do, so we have to go against our own nature. And that means Daisy has to go into space in order to save Gemma, and she is joined by Sousa, who always does the good thing, so now he has to do a bad thing in that sense by, you know, disobeying orders. And then they get into the Quinjet, and they're ready to go up into space. However, Daisy doesn't know how to fly, and Sousa kind of talks about that with her, where it's like, what do you mean you don't know how to fly this thing? And then Mac just comes in, and it's like, you also need director authorization in order to open up the doors. Didn't you think about that one? It's like, but Mac's gonna join us, boys. So the three of them head into space in order, with the Quinjet, in order to be able to save Gemma. However, the problem is the fact that this is very risky, because if they fail, they're dead, because the Quinjet isn't designed to go into space. It has oxygen in order for them to survive, and basically, you know, having no gravity allows them to be able to float wherever they want, in a way, as long as you can steer. However, they'll not be able to make it back unless they get into the Zephyr and get it back with the Zephyr. So this is a one-way mission unless they succeed. And also, then Sousa later on with Mac makes fun of the name Quake, so that wasn't really all that fun, but still. And then afterwards also like, hey, Daisy's into you, and if you hurt her, I'm gonna hurt you. It's like, director, are you threatening me? It's like, no, not just me. It's the whole team. We will all come for you if you hurt her in any way. It's like, oh boy, do arguments count? Because couples are probably going to have arguments, so does that count as well or not? Also, I don't know if I said it, but Malik figured out how Gemma was blocking him, and he couldn't get the implant out, and that's when he forced her into the machine. I don't know if I said that, so I'm just gonna say it right now. Alright, anyway, third storyline that we have, which is basically just the lighthouse. Starting off, May goes into Korra's cell in order to be able to see what her power is. That's at least what May kind of tries, to get a rise out of Korra. And it works. Korra punches the wall, but it kind of shuts off all systems and also shuts down all the firewalls, which means that S.H.I.E.L.D is inside of the lighthouse. And what she does is she, I guess, finds the targets that are needed. By the way, Coulson now can also do computer stuff, and he tries to keep S.H.I.E.L.D out. But she eventually gets all of the stuff that she needs, and also frees all the henchmen and Korra. So then we try once again to convince Korra not to be a bad person. But Korra's like, oh, you want to restore the timeline? Shoots one of the henchmen. It's like, alright, next up is Sousa then, because he's supposed to be dead. And I'm like, well, he is though. You know, like, we faked his death, but like, he's still dead according to the timeline. However, then May has an idea because of what Korra says, because Korra's like, I'll show my mom, and is like, oh, you want to see your mom, eh? Come with me. Here is your mummy. Your mummy is dead, and she has a little bit of a sadness about that. However, she's like, no, Malik must have had a reason for it. It's like, no, he didn't. Okay, he had a reason, and that was the fact that he was trying to kill Daisy, and she stepped in the way, and that's why her neck got broken. So then Korra attacks May, and then later on Garrett picks her up and brings her into space. So that's not really fun. Anyway, since Malik can't find Fitz, he already sent out a distress signal, or S.H.I.E.L.D did it back on the lighthouse. And also, all of the S.H.I.E.L.D bases is what S.H.I.E.L.D now has a lock-on. So through a portal, I guess, or just through like space warp or whatever you want to call it, a bunch of Chronicom ships show up because apparently a long time ago S.H.I.E.L.D contacted them for this specific purpose, and then they start aiming at Earth and they fire away, baby, and slowly but surely all of the secret S.H.I.E.L.D bases, even the one from Winter Soldier that we get to see again, gets destroyed one by one by one. And we really needed Spider-Man in this episode because this is titled Brand New Day, just like the Spider-Man movie coming out this year. Very excited about it. Feels weird to say this year because it literally comes out in more than a year, because I'm recording this in July of 2025, but I had to make the reference to Spider-Man at some point. Almost forgot to do it, but I was able to do it, and I didn't have to edit it in anywhere because I did it. Good. Anyway, episode 12. Alright, boys, it's time to dock. And then the Zephyr basically gets sucked up by a Chronicom ship, so, well, time to get into the base of our bad guys. So the team goes into the Zephyr. Everyone's gone. Turns out that S.H.I.E.L.D has a new body, apparently. Sure, why not? But also everyone just left the Zephyr. So Daisy is like, okay, you guys figure out next strategy. Since I have the superpowers, I will go in alone. And she does. She goes in alone. However, nobody cares. I mean, Malik does, but like, S.H.I.E.L.D doesn't care, because once Daisy gets Simmons, the answers will reveal themselves. So if we don't interfere, everything is going to be fine. However, we're not gonna let them escape. Meanwhile, back at the lighthouse, we learned that all the S.H.I.E.L.D bases have indeed been destroyed except the lighthouse, because you can't aerial attack the lighthouse. And I'm like, really? You decided to have that tech exclusively for the lighthouse? You could have used that on the other bases as well. Why is the lighthouse so special? Oh, right, because that's about the only set we have, so we gotta save it. Also, they did an injection into Simmons in order to dissolve the implant, so her memories are even foggier than they were before. So Korra and Malik meet, and Malik basically lies to Korra about her mother, because he's like, yeah, your mom hated you, she wanted you gone, you were the one mistake she made, yada yada yada, all that stuff. Also, Garrett goes into the lighthouse in order to plant some bombs, because if you can't beat them, bomb them. And Deke tries to help Gemma remember everything, or at least Fitz, but no luck. So Mac is done playing nice. Since they already know that we're here, we might as well blow it. And he fires rockets at the door, but they do nothing. So it's like, ah, dang it. Strong doors Meanwhile, Malik wants Daisy dead, so that is going to be kind of a bit problematic, if I do say so myself. Meanwhile, back at the lighthouse, the gang has figured out a way in order to trap Garrett, so they go over and do just that. They trap him, and then he calls back to base like, hey, can you delay the explosion? And Malik is like, it's been nice knowing ya. So, yeah, he gets betrayed. However, thanks to Speedy McGee over here, everyone is kind of safe because she moved all the bombs over to one location so that the lighthouse will not be too damaged. However, Garrett is wounded, so we have to save him. And I'm with May. Do we really have to save him? But yes, we do have to save him. And we do. And he instantly joins our team because he's like, what just happened? S.H.I.E.L.D. left me to die. Why did you guys save me? It's like, well, hey, this is a different timeline. Infinite possibilities. However, Coulson is hearing some weird sounds, which I don't even really know what they are. But they do figure out that there's an 084 meeting, I guess. And they need to get to a specific location. So Daisy breaks out Gemma, and she doesn't remember her. She's forgotten all sorts of things. She's forgotten everything, basically. It seems like the only thing she has potentially remembered is Deke. And outside of that, everything's gone. Meanwhile, Sousa has an idea in case, you know, Daisy fails. And that's the fact that we're gonna turn these Chronicoms into bombs. Because that's what they were trying to do with the Helios. Also, I like the fact that the Thunder Stick comes back. Big fan. So we do that. We set them all up as bombs. Also, Sybil isn't really happy because apparently Cora has gone to stop Daisy. Which is, because she was like, oh, we're so close. We almost have the answer. Just, what is that? What is that? We almost had the answer. But the woman is there, and then the others escape. Daisy has a little chat with Cora. Apparently, Cora let Daisy go, so Malik betrays her. So everyone's back on the Zephyr. We have an escape plan. However, Mac needed a bunch of duct tape, because apparently what he did is he duct taped a bunch of Chronicom bodies together to the missile that he fires, and he blows his way out of the ship, and now we fly off back to Earth. So the team teleports to the 084 meeting, which is what I'm calling it, because that's what it is, and Garrett instantly gets shot and killed. Yeah, okay. I guess the timeline isn't fully fixed. S.H.I.E.L.D. still kind of did kill him, so yeah. But anyway, it's like, hey, we're S.H.I.E.L.D., okay? Calm down. Okay? And it's like, where's your A084? Apparently, everyone was supposed to bring an 084 specifically to this meeting here. And we get to see a younger version of Victoria Hand. Hey, baby, how you doing today? However, Coulson doesn't care. He opens up all of the 084s in order to see what's inside them. Turns out a bunch of parts. What are these things supposed to be used for? But then, the space team comes in, and Gemma instantly sees what she needs to do. She doesn't know what she's doing or how she's doing it, but she knows how to do it anyway. So she puts the whole thing together. She builds a device, and then thanks to a sound opens up a wall, and then she puts the machine in, but she still doesn't know what she needs to do until she thinks about marriage, because she's married to someone. She can't remember who she's married to. However, then she takes off her ring. By the way, I already knew what was gonna happen because it was basically written on the walls. She takes off her ring, puts it in the machine. A portal opens up, which looks very familiar. Anyone ever seen Ant-Man? Because that's what that looks like. And bam, guy in helmet. And it's like, hey, look, another version of Deke, because that was kind of like the helmet that Deke wore in season 5, if I remember correctly. But he takes off the helmet. Then it's your boy Fitz. Yes, he's here. Of course he's here. He's the only one that can stop the Chronicoms. But he's here. Yes, I've missed him so much. But he goes to hug Gemma. Gemma doesn't remember him, so that is a bit problematic. Something we'll probably have to fix in the first half of the next episode. And then in the post-credit scene, Sybil reveals that this is the last time the team will be together. And it's like, yeah, we know it's a season finale, okay? Look, man, I don't want to watch the next episode. I mean, I do, but I don't. I want to see what happens next, but I don't want to leave Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., man. This is so difficult for me. Because, look, I don't want it to end. But the next episode is the last one, but I don't want it to end, like I said. So let's just get into the finale, shall we? I am not happy about this, because this means the end of an era, and that era is Marvel TV. Alright, any theory that I thought about was actually true. Fitz came back from the original timeline through the quantum realm. I knew that stuff looked familiar. The coloring of the portal that Fitz came through. I knew it looked familiar, you know. I recently watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I'm a wreck. Because this is it. This is the end. This is finale time. But not the finale of the season, of the show. The one that started it all. You know, after this, we got fantastic blueprints on what to do and what not to do for the MCU when they were eventually going to take over. Well, Marvel Studios anyway. This is MCU, and I don't want to hear any different, okay? The MCU is so much less if this is decanonized, okay? I'll just say it right now. The Marvel shows, without them, it is so much less. The Infinity Saga isn't even that great without the TV shows. That is my statement, and I will stick by it. Because for me, it adds a lot. Because every movie is like this big thing, but we never get to see the street level kind of stuff. And well, yes, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, you know, now went with time travel and all that stuff. They had small scaled stuff. You know, we have like other stuff that had small scaled stuff. So this is canon, okay? And I don't care what anyone says. And it won't matter anyway because of Secret Wars. Probably won't matter anyway. Marvel doesn't care. You know, maybe they're gonna connect Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D through like Vision Quest, because that's the only other show that I know of coming out. Because by the time of recording this, being in July of 2025, there's been no announcement of anything coming out in 2027 outside of Avengers Secret Wars. But I feel like maybe there is some stuff coming out, maybe a show or two or a season or two. Who knows? Quake could be a part of Born Again Season 2 for all we know, you know? That's entirely a possibility. Or Yo-Yo, but probably Quake because she's the more popular one. I don't know. That's just it. But anyway, yeah, he came from the original timeline, and apparently Korra is the key to save this world. However, we don't have her. He didn't give us a manual. Like, what do you expect? We just went off of, like, feelings and stuff like that. We didn't have a manual. You can't be mad at the squad for not having Korra here because of the fact that you decided not to give us a manual. You could have just given us a little piece of paper that said, save Korra at all costs. And that would have been fine. But no, you didn't do that. And then he gets mad about the fact that Korra is near. So Fitz is like, well, who cares? You know what? Let's jump back to the original timeline. Okay, let's go back to the MCU. Fitz is still thinking about the glory days of the MCU. He doesn't know what's to come. Don't fault him for the garbage that is the multiverse saga, okay? Because there's a lot of garbage, and I will go through all of it. Because, like, I will say this. Marvel TV hasn't always hit it. They did hire Scott Buck, after all. Because it's easier to say Scott Buck than Iron Fist Season 1 and Inhumans, okay? Scott Buck is just so easier to say. And he's the one who did both of those stupid things. But Coulson is like, no, we're not gonna abandon this timeline, okay? This is not like the framework, which I like how he referenced that. We have to save these people. So then an idea starts to fester in the brains. And that is the fact, what if we just use the quantum tunnel in order to transport us and the Chronicoms? You know, the Chronicom ships. What if we just have all of that transported into the future, or at least into the original timeline, you know? And then from there, we can take them out, maybe, you know? Maybe we can devise a plan then in order to beat them, but we can actually beat them. However, two problems. Number one, I think it was actually in the last episode, it was, Sybil said that a lot of power was going into New York. Yeah, we need a lot of power. We need New York's power grid in order to be able to make this work. And second of all, someone will have to stay behind in order to get everything done. And then, obviously, Sousa is like, I'll stay behind, don't you worry. But no, you're not, because you don't even understand. You're still amazed by a light bulb, okay? Look, Deke stays behind. Yes, he does. Zeke will stay behind. So they do all the bells and whistles, and bam! Through the quantum realm back to the MCU. And Deke becomes the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the alternate timeline. So they're just, pardon my French, but they're fucked. Look, I know I don't like to curse in these ones, but it's true. It's true. S.H.I.E.L.D. is just fucked. I don't know another word to say. I'm sorry, okay? If I knew another word, I would have used it. But, like, I don't know another word. So that's the best one that I got. But, yeah. Anyway, good luck with him as your director. So, while we are traveling back, Fitz tries to help Gemma remember. And we get to see what happened to Fitz and Simmons. And apparently, they went to an alternate, I don't know, star galaxy or whatever. After, you know, at the end of Season 6 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they went to an alternate place called Alia. Name might sound familiar. Get back to that one momentarily. Deke's mummy. And also, Enoch apparently stole a copy of the time stream, and Flint made a piece of the monolith before we went over to Alia. And over there, we went to work. Fitz studied the time stream, and Fitz and Simmons lived there for years. And then They came back right as they left because of time travel stuff, but they were going to the past, so the future is not like what we know as the future isn't really affected by that stuff. They just went to an alternate future in that sense. But anyway, they had Flint and Piper guard the containment pod that comes down. Fitz goes inside of the containment pod, but they had to guard it, and that's it. Then Fitz transported to the alternate timeline, and yeah, that's basically the end of it. So Malik isn't happy about anything that has happened so far, and he's like, all right, time to take Korra's power. So yeah, we have a little bit of an issue there. So we return back to the MCU in space. However, the Quinjet basically flies back to Earth because of the fact that needs to happen, and the Zephyr has to play dead. So they turn off all systems to play dead because apparently no one can look out the window. So the Quinjet team make it to Earth. They get new outfits, which may look familiar, which I actually forgot about because we are actually right before the end of season 6, right before Gemma came in and was like, we need to leave the temple now after, you know, the end of season 6. So it's like we are right there, and the blue people, I will just call them the blue people, that's the team from season 7, dude. It is actually Yo-Yo from, you know, the alternate, like, okay, fine. It is Yo-Yo giving the breathing apparatus to Max so he can give it to Yo-Yo. It is just insane the way that they planned this out ahead of time. I am so surprised, and this is amazing. Okay, this is like, I don't want to praise it too much, but I just can't help it. This is fantastic. I mean, obviously this is why I now see the vision, people. I see it. I've seen online discourse for years basically saying that season 6 and 7 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. should have been one season, or that some people see it as one season. I get it. I see it now as well. I see that it is true. But then the Chronocoms up in space, they detect the Zephyr on Earth and they shoot at it. You remember when the Zephyr was shot at back at season 6? That was Sybil from the alternate timeline coming back into the MCU. That Sybil was the one who shot at the Zephyr at the end of season 6. God, the way that they did this. I don't care how long the spoiler talk becomes. I don't care if I'll add another hour. I want to talk about this in as detail as I can. Meanwhile, the space team, once the shots have been fired, turns the Zephyr back on, lands on the Chronicom ship, go inside. Daisy fights Malik, while the rest of the team go and, you know, take on the Chronicoms, I guess you could say. Meanwhile, the team on Earth goes into the lighthouse, and Gemma starts to remember everything, which is good, but they take back the lighthouse, at least the control center of the lighthouse. So inside of the Chronicom ship, Mac rescues Korra, and Sybil wants to control Coulson. However, once Sybil puts in the command, because he's like, yeah, hey, Fitz and Simmons are at the lighthouse, she puts in the command like, all hunters attack the lighthouse. Yeah, that's kind of what we needed. We needed her authorization code. So now that we have that, we take out the Chronicoms, thanks to the fact of the cavalry being in the vents, I guess you could say. And now we need to give the bots empathy, boys. So then we have Korra, who is going to send that empathy to Earth, to the lighthouse, to all of the bots in the lighthouse. So everyone is prepared to leave except for one person, and that is Daisy, because she has to sacrifice herself. Because the thing is that Malik has too much power, because he doesn't only have the quaking power, he now also has the light power. Obviously, he is instantly an expert at it because he's the villain. That is what villains do. They become experts at everything in seconds. You know how this works. The hero has to train in order to become better. The villain does not. But the only way this can work is if Daisy uses all of her power in order to destroy the Chronicom ships. So the gang make it out. Daisy flies in space, you know, almost dead, I guess. She gets picked up by the Zephyr and she lives. We bring her back. Fantastic. Thanks to Korra, by the way. Daisy lives thanks to Korra. So we go back to Earth, and Fitz and Simmons arrive at the pod, and then Piper is like, how did you do that? Opens up the pod, it's empty. It's like, you told us to defend this thing. What's so important about this thing? And then they go to the other side of the containment pod, because apparently what they did was they kind of cut it in half, or at least you could say they put a wall in between. Because on the other side, we have Alia, Fitz and Simmons' child. She's real. And the day is saved, boys. We did it. However, this is the team's final mission. So then 1 year later, the team meets up. Later on, we learn it's basically in a virtual reality thing, but still, the team meets up, they talk a little bit, have some fun. We learn that most of these guys still are with S.H.I.E.L.D, except for the fact of Coulson and Fitz and Simmons. They're not with S.H.I.E.L.D, but Daisy basically mans the space division, I guess you could say, because later on we see her in space with Souza and Korra. But also, Yo-Yo has her own team on Earth. We have May, who has her own team. Mac is still director of S.H.I.E.L.D. So everything is great. And then Coulson, he gets a new version, I guess, of Lola, and he flies off with her. And that's the end of the season. And oh my god. Oh, what an ending. Like this, the way, like, it just breaks my brain the way that they thought about this. I will forgive their transgressions about season 6 being a little bit less because of season 7 being so good, okay? Season 6 was great, okay? I will say that, but it was lesser than what we've had before. But that's because in the background with the Chronicom stuff, they were building season 7, and since I've never seen the ending, maybe I was a little bit too harsh on season 6, but I'll keep the score the way that it is. I'm not gonna be scored, but my goodness, the way that they did this season, I'm so surprised. But it's over. It took me 12 years to finish this show. I still remember back in 2013, I watched this show when it came out. When it came out, I watched it through means that are not necessarily gonna be discussed here on the YouTube channel because it wasn't here in the Netherlands. And I have all 5 of the seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Big fan. And I know I said you can see season 5 as the ending. Forget what I said. Alright? The me that said that in the past, he's an idiot. Okay? We need season 6 to 7 because it's perfect. It is a fantastic show. Now, my bias will always put Daredevil's Netflix show above Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But this is the second best Marvel show ever made. Nothing tops this. The creativity that they were able to have while still being in the ballpark of the MCU. The only thing that they did not do correctly, in a way, wasn't their fault, was the snap. That is the only thing that they skipped out on. Would have loved to hear Fitz make the reference to the snap, but I guess since it is now, I guess 2020, because of the fact that we end, like the last season took, the last season took place in 2019, and we went back to 2019, then we went 1 year ahead, so this one, the ending of this season at least, takes place in 2020. So it has been about 2 years since half the universe snapped away. So I guess, you know, the world has kind of adapted to the fact that half the universe was snapped away, because it has been about 2 years ago. So I'm not really too mad about it. You know, life goes on and all that stuff. They've rebuilt some of the things that needed to rebuild. Whatever, I don't care, okay? Look, when you don't give everyone all of the information, timeline things kind of do get a little bit weird. But I don't care. I'm a big fan of what this show did. Like, for me, it fits in like 95%, okay? There might be like 5% inconsistencies with the MCU, but I don't care. This thing is fantastic for the MCU, giving it a lot more depth as well. You know, I've loved this show since it came out. I'm ashamed of myself that I didn't finish the show back when it came out. I feel shame. I mean, I always despise myself, but that's a mental problem. But I don't like myself now because of not finishing this show, because it's so good. Man, I am so sad though, because this is also the end of an era. This is, I think, if I remember correctly, it could have been Hellstrom, but I don't count that one. Look, I'm not gonna review that one. I don't care about that one. That one can die for all I care about, okay? That one is not canon to the MCU, and I will say that because of the fact that, like, they didn't even care. Like, apparently the people behind it didn't care, and apparently it's also not good. And also the people behind it have stated that it is not canon to the MCU. Because also they were doing some weird stuff with Ghost Rider, because they were gonna make a Ghost Rider show, but then it wasn't gonna be connected to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, which was stupid, but it was still gonna be Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider, and the actor was going to come back in that show, but it wasn't gonna be like the same as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, which is canon to the MCU, so that one isn't canon to the MCU. So if you want to see that one as canon, that is of your own validity, but I have never seen it. I never want to see it. I heard it's bad, and I'm not gonna taint the MCU any further, okay? I already had to put in Inhumans. I'm not tainting it any further, even though Marvel will do it later on, because I will say this, nothing, and I mean nothing, comes even close to the quality of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nothing in the MCU's multiverse saga comes close to what they did with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. These people had passion. They wanted to make this show. They wanted to make it as good as possible. They didn't just go in there for a paycheck. I mean, they got a paycheck, obviously. They deserve a raise. I'll say that right now. The writers, the showrunners, the actors, they all deserve a raise. I don't care, okay? But, like, the people who make stuff, like, during phases 4 and 5, they couldn't care less about the MCU. or writing anything good. But we'll get there when we get there, even though pieces I've already done. I've already talked bad about Ironheart, even though I gave that one like a low 6 to me, low 6 out of 10. I don't like that show. That show is an insult. But like, I did like Natalie, so there were some things that I liked, so it's like, it's fine, you know? But like, during phases 4, mainly phase 4, God, that phase is awful. Oh, man. But that is not all. Look, I'm gonna end it here, okay? Thank you all, by the way, for watching. Anyone who has watched all of the stuff that I've done, thank you all so very much. I just wanted to say that right now. But like, I'm done. And so is Marvel TV until it gets brought back and then kind of gets stained because Marvel still doesn't necessarily know what they're doing, but it seems like they're getting there. I mean, Thunderbolts was great. I actually really like Born Again, but I like it because of the new stuff, not the original stuff. It's just like that second episode of Muse and his death is just, episode's not really that good, is it? The filler episode's fun though. So they still need to be able to get back into shape, you know? But like, I have Fantastic Four coming out next week, actually. The Fantastic Four First Steps comes out next week on Wednesday. I'm gonna go there, which, by the way, yeah, this is still July, but July 17th for anyone wondering. So that is it. But also we have Born Again Season 2 coming out. We have Spider-Man, the 2 Avengers movies, and also Vision Quest. Maybe that one's gonna be good. I don't know. That is the one that I'm least excited about, but who's to say? But overall, like, I don't know. Maybe they can make some good stuff, but it is the end of an era, so salute to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You will be missed. You know, you are a fantastic show, and Marvel needs to release these seasons worldwide, for crying out loud. But I'm gonna call it here, so let me know what you guys thought about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7, or the whole show, in the comment section down below. And with that being said, thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. And if you did, please like button, subscribe if you're new, if done so already. Turn on notifications, don't forget, check out the Let's Play channel, link in the description and at the end of the video. And also, I'm out of Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man footage. So I think right now what you're seeing is actually from the Amazing Spider-Man game that I played. So, yeah, let's hope for the best, shall we? But anyway, next time is the end. We're at the end of the road. The end of the Infinity Saga. Next time, we're officially in the end game. Bye!